Hey everyone, it's Steven. Today I have the 2023 BMW X1. This is BMW's entry into the luxury subcompact SUV market, which means this is actually BMW's smallest SUV. This got a glow up for the 2023 model year, fully redesigned and in a new generation now, and this new X1 is actually longer, wider, and taller than before, which actually makes it closer to its bigger brother, the X3. This competes with things like the Audi Q3, the Mercedes-Benz GLA and GLB, and also the popular Volvo XC40. So pretty crowded market, and it's definitely getting a bit more popular since people want the practicality of an SUV, but they also want a smaller vehicle, not as large as some of those big SUVs you see out there like the Tahoe and stuff like that. The 2023 BMW X1 starts at an MSRP of just above $39,000, and as tested, the one I have here is about $43,000. Comes with this gorgeous Phytonic blue metallic color, which is about a $600 option, and you've also got the convenience package on this one, a $1,700 option that adds things like the pano sunroof, the wireless charging pad, as well as keyless entry. So kind of looking at a profile shot of this car, I mean, it's longer for sure than the old generation. It doesn't even really look like a subcompact SUV anymore. Kind of just looks like the X3, which is their compact SUV. This model got a new engine for the 2023 redesign. It comes with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 241 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. That is up 13 horsepower from the previous generation. It gives you 0 to 60 times in about 6.2 seconds, which is quite impressive. And from what I've seen in reviews, this car can actually beat that by quite a bit. I think I've seen people get as low as 5.5 seconds for the 0 to 60 time here, which is pretty impressive for a non-M model. There are rumors that they are going to try and release some sort of actual M model for this, which would be super cool. I think it'd do quite well against competitors like the AMG and hopefully maybe the RS Q3 that will hopefully one day come to the US. All BMW X1s come standard with a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission with standard all-wheel drive as well. You've got the xDrive28i, that is the only trim available, so there's no more rear-wheel drive option. You've only got all-wheel drive, which is probably a good thing. And this nets you fuel economy numbers of about 25 city, 34 highway for a combined average of about 28 miles per gallon. Makes this pretty average in its class, but definitely less of a gas guzzler than some of its larger siblings. All right, now let's start talking about the exterior of this car. This is probably my favorite part of the redesign. I just love the new design language they have on this new model generation. You've got these bolder, darker, larger, dual kidney grills in the very front. Looks pretty nice, and I think they did it tastefully, unlike the kind of weird ones they have on like the new 4 Series, for example, that sparked a lot of controversy. I think this look does really well with the new boxy design in general. Notice those L-shaped brackets that kind of, support the bottom part of the grille on both the left and the right-hand side. They look really nice in this. It gives it kind of a muscular look, I think, and I think that's kind of what BMW was going for, right? It takes after the bigger brother, the BMW X5, which is probably, in my opinion, their most gorgeous car in their lineup. I think the new X7 looks great, but the X5 has the perfect body proportions, in my opinion. Otherwise, you've got some really nice BMW lights as expected. I really like these. These are BMW LED lights, and you can kind of see that the turn signals fade in, which is super cool. I think it's a very unique touch that, a lot of cars these days are just trying to go for these small, unique touches that make the car a bit more interesting. I also love this paint color. Like I mentioned before, this is Phytonic blue, gorgeous paint color. I expect this to be pretty popular. I was really stoked when I saw this at National Car Rental and SFO. Going along the side profile, you got the wheels here. These are kind of generic 18-inch wheels, and I mean, it's a nice design. I don't particularly love it. It kind of looks like it's broken in a way, but they're fine. You can get an upgraded 19-inch wheel, but I think the 18 inches actually suit the ride quality the best here. I do actually really like this black plastic fender that kind of goes along the entire body profile. I think they do this really well here compared to Subaru, where I feel like some of their black plastic cladding looks a little ridiculous, but I think BMW did this really well, especially with this gorgeous color. And I mean, I just love the aluminum lines all around the window trim as well. I think having it aluminum and contrasting the rest of the black plastic looks really good. Going to the rear profile here, this was also redesigned, of course, with this new generation. This looks just like the X5, basically just a little smaller. You've got a spoiler-ish of some sorts at the very top. You've also got roof racks. And then you've also got, you know, that same black plastic cladding at the bottom. Notice no visible exhaust vents though, right? You've got to go all the way down to actually see the exhaust vents. And of course, they're not going to actually make an interesting sound because this is not really an M vehicle or anything like that. But otherwise, I think it's a very handsome looking rear here. And going into the actual trunk, it is power liftgate, so that is actually standard, which is pretty neat. You've got about 25.7 cubic feet of cargo space, which is one of the most spacious vehicles in this class. That's why the X1 has always done pretty well in the past, is that it's quite spacious for a subcompact SUV. And I mean, you can tell this one, like with the small suitcase here, you can really see the size of this thing. Also, the seats actually fold 40-20-40, so you can fold them each individually, which is pretty nice. No power for that, though. You have to reach and do that manually. I'm glad that the X1 didn't get the weird energy sword looking rear taillights that the new X3 has, but I expect the X3 to kind of fall in line with the rest of its X1 and X5 brothers soon, especially with the new generation that definitely should be coming up soon. Notice one thing on the body line as well is that you've got flush door handles. I think that's a pretty neat look, and I think makes this a bit more interesting and, you know, looks a little more futuristic and modern. All right, now that we've taken a look at the gorgeous exterior, let's go into the interior of this car. Folding mirrors as expected, and as I approach, they unfold and the car automatically unlocks. Pretty neat, right? Before we go in, I did want to show you guys what the new key fob design looks like. It's pretty sleek. You've got the buttons on the side. I like that look, but it does make it a little hard to like hit them when you don't really see it. But it looks pretty nice. I like it. It is small, fits easily in any pocket. So you've got those flush door handles. Reach underneath and you open it. All right, now that I'm situated behind the driver's seat, you've got a pretty futuristic looking cabin. I think one of the first things I wanted to point out here is the use of all these weird different angular like shapes. I think it's really neat actually how consistent the design language is here, but I think BMW is doing this in a lot of their more futuristic vehicles. You've got those like little like bracket looking things on the side of the 10.25 inch digital gauge cluster right there. And then you've also got it on the speaker caps. That's like one of the first things I noticed. You've got some gorgeous looking speaker caps, considering these actually are the base system. This is not the Harman Kardon sound system, so you got it at the front there as well, and it looks pretty cool. And actually, I also want to point out in the rear taillights, you also have the same angular design. Pretty cool, right? I like consistent design language, and I like attention to detail like that. BMW does a really good job with that. Otherwise, looking in the cabin, you do have ambient lighting you can kind of see. That is customizable. You've got about like 12 different colors, I think. And you can do the thing where, you know, different kind of things like putting in a different sport mode and things like that will actually change the color of that, which is pretty neat. But otherwise, of course, the star of the show is going to be this floating infotainment design thing right here. So you've got the 10.25 inch digital gauge cluster there, and then you've got the 10.7 inch touchscreen right here. This is not as big as in some of their other larger models. You can kind of see that, you know, it barely kind of cuts into there. But again, you've got those angular shapes, right? I like that a lot. It's very cool. It's very consistent throughout the entire cabin. And this uses the new iDrive8 infotainment system. And you can kind of see it's smooth. It is iPhone-like, very easy to use. You've got different widgets. Again, this is going to be an annoying feature of all the new BMWs with the iDrive8. The climate menu is completely touchscreen. There are no physical buttons anymore. You have to come in here to turn on heated seats, heated steering wheel, but you do have a lot of options. Pretty cool, right? I do like that they have the different options for allowing you to adjust how hot things are, and like this very interesting balanced / dynamic thing, but it's just, I don't know. The goal of this entire iDrive8 infotainment system is to have you use the intelligent voice assist, right? I'm hot, things like that, right? But from my personal experience, it just doesn't work that well. So I don't know. I still think being able to, you know, touch something without even having to take your eyes off the road and being able to adjust the temperature is something that is very necessary in cars. So I really hope car manufacturers figure out a way to do this without just integrating it into the touchscreen. I get that we want it to be more iPhone-like, you know, like look at this, look at all these widgets and apps here, right? This is extraordinarily similar to what people are used to with their smartphones these days, which is pretty cool. I do like all of these buttons and how, like, you know, these buttons right here only show in certain menus. Like, that's pretty cool, right? Like, I think this looks very cool and futuristic. Apple CarPlay takes up the entire screen, looks very nice, extraordinarily responsive. they do everything right, minus just some of the convenience things, right? So I think that's the only thing that I just still continue to dislike about this. You know, I've talked about this in every single one of my BMW reviews, at least with the iDrive8 system, and I really hope they find a better way to integrate this. Otherwise, though, you do have a very nice looking cabin, like I said before. Unfortunately, you do have a high amount of gloss black plastic around here, so this is going to definitely end up being a fingerprint magnet. I just cleaned it, so I don't want to touch it too much. You do have some aluminum trim here, also ends up kind of being a fingerprint magnet. And otherwise, I mean, I love the way these air vents are designed too, right? Like, they look very well integrated into the system. And I think just, you know, the overall cabin appeal is very high. This is a very gorgeous looking cabin and looks, I feel like it punches way above the price tag of about $40,000. Going to the center console here, you've got a wireless charging pad with ambient lighting around it. I think that's a really neat look. However, this one is actually missing the bracket to hold your phone in. So I can't really use it very well, but normally there is a bracket thing here that kind of holds your phone in and clips it in so that it doesn't slide. Fortunately, mine doesn't have that, so I think someone must have ripped it out or something like that. You've got two pretty small cup holders, but they work fine. And then you've got the floating design for the armrest. I actually like this because it makes the armrest closer to you, makes it easier to use, especially for shorter people like myself. And then you do have a lot of storage here. I think Hyundai and Kia started doing this way before other people did, but I think it looks pretty nice. And I don't know. I do think this is kind of interesting. You can actually open this, but as you can see, very, very shallow. Really not much you can put here. Maybe a wallet? Aside from that, like keys. But yeah, there's just not much you can put in there, but it is another storage compartment, which is pretty cool. You have a lot of storage down here though. You can put your phone, you can put other things, water bottles, whatever. And now let's take a look at these seats. So these are actually surprisingly comfortable seats for the price of this vehicle. And again, you've got those triangular, like little chevron looking things, right? That's really the theme of this car, and I love it. The more I talk about it and the more I see it, the more into it I am. Like, I love how well BMW has integrated that into this vehicle's aesthetic. And you've got the large panel sunroof. Again, that is part of the convenience package. It looks very nice, makes this car feel very airy and more spacious than it already is, and it looks really, really good. I don't really love the black look throughout the whole cabin, but again, this is a airport rental car, so I didn't expect too much from that. But you do have a few other options. You can get like the red seats with the M package, and then you can also get beige seats, I believe, which would look a bit more upscale, and I think kind of bring this cabin a bit more color. But aside from that, you know, you've got the ambient lighting to bring that color. You do have a tasteful use of aluminum trim, and yeah, I think just overall this cabin looks really good. These seats were surprisingly really supportive and really good for long car rides here in the Bay Area. You don't have a thigh adjustment here, unfortunately, but both the passenger and the driver front rows have power adjustability, so kind of a nice standard touch in there. Really quickly, want to cover the driver's side door panel. You've got some nice things like this floating door handle here. And this is a really nice way to open the car and close the door as well. You've got some nice contrast stitching along here, and this is all going to be leather and soft touch materials. Feels very good, and you know, BMW does great build quality, especially with the new fully redesigned 2023 model. You do have two-way memory there. And as you can see, if you have a large Fiji water bottle, you can put it in here. Pretty large compartment for storage. It's actually way deeper than I expected it to be. Now going into the driver position here, you've got a nice thick steering wheel here. I love the feel of the BMW steering wheels. They always feel really good, and I feel like the leather is great. And I just like the plain appearance. I actually really like that they don't try to overcomplicate it with all these other crazy buttons and stuff like that. I really hate the new Mercedes thing with the dual things on the, I don't know, it's weird. But this one's pretty easy to use. You've got volume up and down here. You've got these settings here, and then you've got the different media choices here. This is your intelligent voice assist, calling, and you've got your cruise control here. No adaptive cruise control. That is a separate $1,700 package, unfortunately, and this one doesn't have it. Going into the 10.25-inch display here, you can configure that using that settings button from here, so you can show different things in the middle. Relatively quick to respond. And yeah, you've got a lot of different choices, which I think is cool. I think BMW is really upping their game in this level, and look at these smooth graphics. All right, let's take a look at the second row now of one of the most spacious vehicles in this segment. So again, this is a subcompact SUV, and a lot of other competitors like the Mercedes GLA, for example, legroom is tight in the rear. I can show you guys here though, I am 5'8", And headroom is pretty good, like pretty darn good actually. It's way better than I would expect. Probably even 6-foot people could feel very comfortable in the rear here. Legroom is a little bit more difficult, but it's still ample, and I feel like this could easily fit 4 adults for a comfortable and airy feeling road trip. I mean, look at this. You've got that gorgeous pano sunroof too. Going inside though, the amenities are pretty much at a minimum in the rear here, especially in this easy base model that doesn't have too many packages. You do have a lot of USB-C ports, 2 back here and 2 in the front as well. These vents, I feel like BMW probably could have done something a little more interesting, at least kept it more consistent with the design of those at the front, but it looks fine, doesn't take up too much space, and you actually do have this nice little storage area here as well. You do have ambient lighting in the footwells here, and you've got some net for storage here. But otherwise, I mean, it is slightly claustrophobic, but I mean, for subcompact SUV, like, this is what I feel like compact SUVs felt like a few years ago, and now all the vehicles are just getting so large these days that I feel like subcompacts are really the way to go now, especially at this price point. All right, let's get into the driving impressions of the 2023 BMW X1. So as expected from a BMW, overall the driving experience is very pleasant. It's a luxury vehicle, and it feels like it now. I feel like the last generation didn't really quite live up to that luxury name tag, but now with this awesome floating infotainment design and just the ambient lighting and just the aesthetic of the inside, it really feels like a true luxury vehicle. And it's quite a bargain at starting below the $40,000 price mark. I mean, things have gotten a lot more expensive. I remember when the X3 used to be around $40,000 and now it's closer to $50,000. But at the same time, vehicles have gotten a lot more practical, larger, and have great tech. This car's tech is fantastic. Standard, this car comes with everything you want. Rear cross traffic alert, blind spot monitors, you know, it doesn't have a 360 camera, but it's not that big of a vehicle, so I don't think a lot of people are going to miss that. And I mean, overall, you can get that sort of stuff like a heads-up display. All comes in the premium package, which I believe is $4,200, which is quite a bit. But, you know, if you do want those features, I think this car tops out around like $50,000 if you do get all the features. Which still is a pretty compelling vehicle, considering it's still a good hauler for family, right? Like, it's still going to be a pretty good family hauler, and I think a lot of people are going to go for this now instead of the X3, at least until we see maybe an electrified X3 or, you know, a fully redesigned one that matches the infotainment and just the general luxury feeling of this new X1. However, there are some glaring issues with this vehicle that I feel like everyone who's reviewed this car has to point out. First of all, the transmission. It's so weird to see BMW mess something like this up, since they're so, you know, renowned for having the great driving experience, right? But I mean, like, even just then when I came to a stop here, the transmission is just jittery. It's weird, and it gets further accentuated when you're in sport mode, which really sucks, right? Because I love putting vehicles in sport mode, especially cars that actually aren't, you know, that performance heavy. But just something is just not right about this whole thing. Like, Savage Geese put out a really good video kind of going in depth about this, but like, even the auto start and stop system is just kind of weird. Like, I just did that, and it's just not as buttery smooth as I'm used to with vehicles these days. I mean, when auto start stop became a thing back in like 2015 or something, I remember the first few vehicles that I drove with it were just unpleasant, right? I wanted to turn it off at all times. Now, most vehicles handle it so well that you can barely tell that it's even a feature. But with this vehicle, it kind of feels like you're back in like the 2010s. And that is definitely a frustrating part of driving this vehicle, is that the driving dynamics are just not as fun because of the weird jittery transmission. Sport mode is almost, it's just very unpleasant. Really wouldn't recommend it if you have passengers in the car. Maybe if you're just by yourself and you know what to expect, it's not as bad. Also, just coming from you know, a complete dead stop to you know, trying to accelerate really quickly, the throttle response, the mapping just feels weird. It just doesn't feel like, sometimes you get a really nice quick boost, sometimes you don't. So I don't know, it's kind of all over the place. And again, of course, this is an airport rental car, but this does have less than 1,000 miles on it. So I mean, like, this is a pretty much brand new model, and I expect a lot better from BMW. One of the other things that I have to call out as super weird is going to be that there's no actual park. That's like the weirdest thing. There's no park gear select, essentially. So you've got your typical things. I'll show you guys here. It's like you got reverse, neutral, drive, and then you've got your lower gears. But it's just so weird that I literally couldn't figure out how to put this in park. And I've driven tons of vehicles now, and I've never seen one like this. Basically, you can just put it in park by hitting the parking brake. That's essentially what you end up having to do, is just using the parking brake as your park, which is, I mean, it's fine. It's an electronic one, so it feels very normal, but I just don't really understand the point of it. I feel like a lot of people like having the ability to just put the car in park without having to apply the e-brake, essentially. So I mean, really, right now, I recommend probably waiting a few years until maybe BMW figures out sort of these transmission issues that, you know, a lot of reviewers have been talking about. The actual package itself is very compelling. That price tag, all those standard safety features, and, you know, it's nice that there are no trims, right? Like, everything is just kind of a la carte. The price doesn't get super inflated like it does with Porsches. And I mean, I think it's a very good car, but I think there are just a few things that it's really lacking right now. And once they get that ironed out, I do think this will be probably one of the top cars in this segment. So that wraps up my thoughts about the newly redesigned 2023 BMW X1. You can check out my other reviews up here. Please subscribe down here, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about this newly redesigned vehicle. Again, such a close to perfect vehicle, but I still think it needs to work out some kinks here and there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.